So let's continue on. So Murray, we're going to have you next, okay? Just let me know when you're ready to advance.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Okay. You had a good chance to see that greenhouse that was on the screen there. That I thought was just a marvelous way to start. You might as well think big to start off with, because reality will descend. In any case, when you're deciding how to build, if you're deciding to build a greenhouse, it's don't make a rush out of it. You need to wind up planning what you want to grow. You need to figure out what you're going to do once you get inside your greenhouse. Basically, you visualize yourself working inside of it. You also need to know how long you want it to stay active. Like, do you want it to wind up being a 3-season or a 4-season? You need to sort out where you're going to put it, to figure out what it is that you're going to need utility-wise. Eventually, you're going to figure out how much it's going to cost and what sort of quality you need. And then you need to sort out how much attention that you wish to invest in this. Usually, once you've had a chance to go through that process, you'll want to be able to go visit your friends, go shopping, go for a week cruise or whatever it is, and be reasonably assured that what you have in the greenhouse is going to be alive when you wind up coming back. Next slide. Okay, well, once you get started in this game, it's kind of like what people get into when they start growing dahlias and when they start growing chrysanthemums. You kind of get hooked into it, and there's really no end to it if you don't decide to create your own limits. Just say the side effects you can see on the screen there. I don't need to say any more. This is like conditions apply. Next. Okay, when you start the whole process off, you want to wind up thinking as big as you can. You need to sort out what you have in mind when you're growing or when you're setting a greenhouse up, from the prospect of what it is that you're going to be growing. Whether you want to have a hoop house or whether you want to wind up having the style that you see on the screen here. This looks lovely. You can see all the pots inside. When you assess what you're going to need, I would suggest that this sort of a thing, you've got an awful lot of potting activity going on inside here, and probably not using the growing part of the design here. But in any case, it'll always cost more and it'll never be big enough. Next. Okay, so here's where you sort out what you think you're going to need actually inside this. I'm going to suggest that you're going to need a little bit of space for like a work table, a work arrangement of some kind or t'other. I want you to also take a look at the shelving in here. I want you to take a look at the storage, like you see on the floor there, like there's a lift plastic tote that's on the bottom there. It's keeping stuff well in that particular area. You can see structurally that you can see bars that are going angled to give strength to the roof. The roof is fairly well angled there. It's about a 45-degree angle. So it will wind up actually shedding snow. And that's important actually, because if you have snow on the roof, if you're using this for a wintertime type of greenhouse, snow on the roof will prevent the sunlight, light in general, from getting inside. So you're going to have to then have some sort of a replacement for that, whether it's interior lights or interior heating. So this now gets back to what sort of utilities you expect. So you have to scale up or scale down your utility availability when it comes to the shape of your greenhouse and what you're going to be needing out there. Are you going to need to heat it up? How about knocking off the heat on some of those days where in 15 minutes it can go from just lovely to the spot of where it's far too hot? So well begun is half done. Next. So I've already talked to the majority of this. Now you can see those. This is really the same type of a greenhouse. You can see it in snow conditions, and you can see those bars inside shining. They're on a slight angle. Those are what gives you the strength. You can also see in the roof, you can see a couple of louvers, one on each side of the roof, which would actually lift up. Now, that can be lifted up by physical means, you lifting it up, or it can be by automated means where you have either a gas powered or a wax powered piston that actually raises those according to the design requirements. And I say design requirements because if you're growing, for example, just regular house plants, you want a lower spot where this lifts up. But if you're growing some heat-loving plants, that's when you want to have those pistons at a different rating. Now, also for what you have for roofing material and for siding material, insulation is an important factor. Typically, twin wall polycarbonate will give you a rating of 1.7 for thermal resistance where it comes to heat loss from your greenhouse to the outside air. That is based on the fact that if it was single pane in glass, it would be a 1. So twin wall is better. Multi-wall is even better. Like they also have 5 wall, which is a rating of about 3. The problem, of course, is that with multi-walls, you can't bend to a rounded shape. So you have to design it for that. In any case, next. Now, there is little indication that I see in this particular one that it's anything more than a very short period of use. It's beneficial in certain respects, but you can't expect this to wind up taking either snow loads or wind loads, and you will have both. So I really don't recommend this one. It's really not very structurally sound. I would suggest that if you're considering buying this one, to delay it until you can afford to buy something of better structural quality. Next. You see, you get to the point of where when you start figuring out what costs and what you really want, the two never come together. You just expect that. You always want something bigger, you want something stronger, you want something that will last more seasons and all the rest of it, and you want to have it really quite inexpensive. It's just a fact of life. Next. Now, here's a couple of, there'll be a succession of pictures starting from this point. This is me. I've got the base preparation going here. I've put down, I've scraped off everything. I've dug it down to the point of where I have enough room. This is 3/4 clear limestone that I'm putting down for a base. what I'm looking for is a base that gives me a level surface, it gives me drainage, and it gives me a non-shifting kind of a base. This was 2 cubic yards of 3/4 clear. So it was all physical work, and I was in better shape even then. Okay, next. All of this requires drainage. I see a lot of designs where people don't bother building up greenhouses. They don't bother putting drainage in. I could just imagine what it would be like to be out there with several inches of water in the bottom, or even in a single inch. I also know that when you're watering stuff, there will be excess water that's in the greenhouse. So you need to consider that drainage is a requirement. Now, in this particular case, this kind of drainage tile was put, you see it's a fair size there. It's about a 4-inch with a sock over it, and it's buried in the edges around all 4 sides of the greenhouse. And all 4 ends were screened to keep rodents from getting into it, because they will. There'd be snakes and mice and rats and anything else that's around. They'll wind up getting into that drain, building nests, and it will defeat the purpose. Next. Okay, so there was this was a little bit higher than the level of the garden, so that all this limestone rock was pulled over top of the drains. There were 2 drains, they were amalgamated in that channel, and then there was 1 drain that wound up going down to the garden level. So this now gave me all the kind of support and all that kind of good base that I needed for the greenhouse. Next. I just want you to remember that this is a far cry different from that first greenhouse that you saw on the screen. that was just kind of a flight of fancy there. In any case, this is now building a base for the greenhouse. Now, I had done some homework on this. There was a greenhouse owner just a bit north of Brooklyn, and I was talking to him, and I said, well, what kind of height is the right kind of a height? This was the Hotner greenhouse, and the kids have continued on with the greenhouse tradition, but the father has now retired, and that particular site is now no longer a greenhouse. But he said that the wisdom initially was to keep the height low so that it wouldn't take all that much heat to wind up doing your thing. But he said very soon thereafter, what happened was they realized that the heat moderation was far better if they gave it a bit more height. And I said, well, if I have a greenhouse coming and it's a conventional height, should I raise it? And he said, by all means. So that when I got the greenhouse, this was a greenhouse, by the way, that I got from Al, who's on the call here. And that particular design you see here was raised 20 inches above grade by the advice of this particular chap. In any case, go ahead. Now, this was just in there to keep the corners square. Now, remembering I'm going to build this greenhouse on top of it, so I really can't be leaving the design of this very much from the actual square. This helped to keep it level like that, how to keep it square. And the base was a patio slab that was 24 inches square. That was sitting on other concrete blocks as well, and that kept the level. So I felt that was the best that I could wind up doing to wind up making sure that I had a structure that I could build upon without complication. Next. So you can see the way that it's shaping up here. There's no floor in this yet, but I'm filling in the walls with like 4x4s and 2x6s and 5/4 decking. Now, I say 5/4 decking, it's rounded edges, and it doesn't actually provide a thermal barrier because the air will whistle right through, just like it will move through the boards of your deck. So that's something to watch for as we go forward here. In any case, you can see how the top was built with 2x6. And the reason for that was I wound up having a little bit of variance that wasn't going to keep me right bang on the 8 foot by 12 foot supposed size of the greenhouse. So I could move it back and forth a little bit. I was fairly confident that within the 6-inch space, I'd have sufficient for making sure that it all came together well. Thanks. Next. Okay, so you can see in the corner detail here is I had the 2x4s underneath the 2x6s. And what I did is I wound up making the 2x4s not 45 down the corner, but 90. And then the 2x6s on the top were 45, so that when I nailed them all together, they would have some structural strength to the corners. Next. Well, yes, this was the set of steps that I put in to start off with. Now, bear in mind that this greenhouse was was constructed to be put directly really on the ground. So what I had to eventually do is to have steps up 20 inches and down 20 inches to wind up getting inside. Next. Now here's the corner detail here where, as I said, I built this thing up on patio slabs, but that left the 6x6 base timbers slightly off the ground. And I didn't want either heat getting in and out, and I didn't want rodents getting in and out. So you have to wind up making sure that you raise the level of the 3/4 clear limestone that I was putting around the whole base. So you can see here, I kind of made a bit of a ring road around the outside of it, and then I was able to fill that up, and I jammed it in so that I could get the gravel up underneath the base. Now, bear in mind that this would keep the rodents out, but there still is a little bit of thermal stuff going on here. It's not completely airtight. Go ahead. So here's pretty much the finished base. And when I had the structure built on the top of that, I actually had to kind of step up and over to get in and out. Now, for a floor that's inside here, I built a crisscross of 2x4s. There was about 5 that were crosswise and about 4 that were lengthwise. And what I wound up doing then was putting these in square. Then I put styrofoam 1-inch on both directions so that I was trying to keep the internal structure able to receive the heat from the sun and not lose it to the ground. So I'm retaining the heat so that it now will absorb the heat during times when it's hot and take away the heat when the sun shines in. And then as it gets around to night, it would now slowly start losing that particular heat. It's the same effect as if you put a water barrel inside, which I also have now, so that in the daytime, it warms up the barrel and it kind of moderates the heat because it sucks the heat into the barrel, into the water. And then at night, it winds up slowly giving it off. So it moderates the heat a whole lot. Okay, next. Well, here was the finished product of the first type. You'll see that it's rounded construction. It was twin wall polycarbonate, and it was 4-foot sheets at that point. So you can see that there were 2 4-foot sheets on the end, and there were 3 4-foot sheets on the sides. The top was 20 inches of a wing on both sides. Each side had 2 separate bayless automatic openers that raised it up. There was no, at that point in time, there was no power venting or anything like that. So I had run out there one 15-amp fuse, and it was ground fault protected. And that was where I was starting this whole thing off. So next. And there was no heat other than a little bit of electrical heat. And this was all very well and good, except for when there was 3 weeks in February when it got down to about -28 overnight. And I had 2 of these black heaters. I had 1 of these ivory heaters, and I was losing ground. So what I did is I went back into the house and got the propane camp stove and got fired up. And I was still kind of losing ground on that. And I'm sitting out here saying, you know, I think I'm a bit at risk here because, you know, camp stoves do actually make carbon monoxide. It's not really safe. Next. Now you see, all that heat that I was talking about was being generated below this level. So what I had done here is I had horizontally strung some plastic. I had put up some boards across horizontally. I put up plastic, and then I put in 3/4 inch or whatever it is, styrofoam sheeting on the top of it. And really what I was trying to do was create something that I referred to as an inner sanctum. And even with all that heat down below, I was out there all night. And I'm saying, you know, geez, this is the absolute last thing that I want to wind up doing. So this now gets down to the point of where you need to wind up building for the best case and for the worst case scenario, and to try to automate it, or you will be in this position yourself. Next. Okay, so I want to refer to snow load here. This is a pretty picture with the crabapple tree here reaching over the original greenhouse. But you can see how the snow will slide off when you have a well-designed greenhouse for our climate. Not all greenhouses are designed for our climate. Some of them are designed for climates that are much, much warmer, so they don't have to have this problem. This one is a fairly strong design. It's a metal frame. That's very important because a lot of the ones that are out there right now have plastic frames. And that has nowhere near the right kind of strength. Go ahead, Lori. Now, this is where I get to the point of saying, well, you have to kind of figure out where your trees are around it, because as you can see here, I'm saying it's a profound impact on the operation of a greenhouse. Go ahead, Lori. You see, greenhouses don't always last around trees. I was in this greenhouse up until about 30 seconds before this branch came down on the top. You can also see that this is a fairly substantial branch. The greenhouse with a metal frame, not a plastic frame would never have survived this. It would have been pancake flat. Now, I would have been safe inside, even if I would have been scared shitless. But I was 30 seconds inside the back door of my house, and I could feel that branch coming down on the greenhouse. I could hear it and I could feel it simultaneously. So when I went back outside, obviously it was pretty clear. Go ahead. Anyway, there's going to wind up being more on this, and I've probably taken up pretty close to my half hour. But there is another greenhouse that's out there right now, and I would love to be able to tell you about it. I really do hope you continue on with this particular talk. I'm not sure whether one talk is going to be sufficient in order to pass along whatever needs to be passed along in the art of greenhousing, how to build it, how to use it, how to select it, how to make sure that everything is as it should be. But I do hope that you come back for the next meeting. There's a teaser for you. I really do hope you come back. And if you have any questions in the meantime that I can help to answer, this is now just one person's opinion. There's a whole bunch of things to do it. This goes all the way from sticking a bag over your cutting till the exotic greenhouses. It's all greenhousing. And all I can do is share my 15 years of experience. Some of you have more, but there we are. I think we're done.
Well, thank you very much, Murray. So what I think we're going to do is, since the remaining presenters will be here right until the very end of the meeting, I think we're just going to continue. If you want to ask any questions in person, we'll have a question and answer period at the end of all the presentations. If you're a little too nervous about asking in person, feel free to type it into the chat and we'll make sure it gets answered at the end as well. So thanks again, Murray.
Murray, that first picture, that great big greenhouse, is that the one that I gave you?
That's the one.
Good.
All right, Michael, we'll get you started here.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm just going to go over some words that people might have heard when growing dahlias and terms and stuff, and that everybody's kind of wondering, what the hell do they mean by that? What's that? I can remember going to my first show and people were talking about disbudding and deheading and all sorts of things, and I had no idea what any of that was. So I'm going to try and go over a few of those things and try and explain a few of them in this presentation. I'm going to show you the difference in growing for the garden, growing for show, best place to buy tubers, tuber terms. I'll go over a little bit on dahlia classifications because it's absolutely huge. Dahlia terms, show blooms, and I'm not sure if I have staging in this one, but we'll see. Okay, go to the first one, Laurie, please. Okay. Dahlias in the garden. In my opinion, whether you're growing for dahlias in the garden or growing for the shows, they're all the same. Just some are slightly different than others. If you're growing for show, it's slightly different. But if you're growing for garden, it's some of these steps you should follow as well. Keep in mind when you're planting dahlias, there's a big difference in height in some dahlias. Some will grow 2 feet. I had a dahlia in my garden last year that was over 10 feet tall. I couldn't even see the blooms on top of it. It was huge. So keep in mind when you're planting what size it's going to be. If you like a variety, just grow it and just let it free flower and see how it does. Next one, Laurie, please. Okay, show dahlias. In my garden, I grow mostly for show, so I select varieties that are for showing. There is garden grade varieties which are really nice dahlias as well, but most of the ones I grow are show dahlias. They are the the plants are controlled and restricted. They're not just like growing in a garden where you just let them grow, but they're all timed. They're all cut back. You don't want to show dahlia flowering when it wants to flower. You want to try and have it when you want it to flower. Most show varieties are chosen for their color and their form first, good stem length, and have been classified by the American Dahlia Society. Next one, Laurie, please. Okay, where to buy tubers? You can buy tubers in all the big box stores, garden centers, online stores, fellow gardeners, but I would recommend the best place is from these bunch of nutters right here, the CCDS, and also the Hamilton HD CDS Society. The reason I would recommend from us is big box stores tend to come with a lot of trouble and diseases. So I've got some before and they've grew fine, but it's a chance you take. A lot of these big box stores come with a lot of gall and leafy gall. So if I was to buy one from there, I would isolate it for its first year and grow it in a big pot and just make sure it has, like, when you go to dig it next year, you'll see it has no diseases and then it's fine. But the best place is the societies for sure. Your varieties through big stores. Sometimes you don't get what's on the label. If you buy from our societies, you'll get what you pay for and you'll get the right variety as well. Next one, Laurie. Okay, tuber terms. The first picture is just a ground tuber, or sometimes they call it a field tuber. It's just a tuber that's been growing in the ground. You'll notice there that you can see the mother tuber. It's a different color. It's the brown one right in the center there. When you dig your tubers in the fall, you really want to get rid of that one and toss it. The rest, nice tubers, you keep those. Second picture is your tubers that have all been cut up. They're single tubers. In England, they call them chicken legs. Here, we just call them single tubers. And the third one is a pot tuber, which is a plant that's been grown in a very small pot. And it's been restricted in a small pot. So you end up with a nice little bunch of tubers like that, which are easy to store. And next year, you can use these a lot for cuttings, and they will produce a lot of cuttings. For something so small, they do really, really well. Next one, Laurie. Okay, this is also tuber terms. So everybody knows the stem. There's the crown, and everybody knows the eyes. So I really wish that when I dig my tubers, all eyes were as visible as this one, but unfortunately they won't be. There's your neck of your tubers and the tubers themselves. So I do remember the first year I dug up my tubers, I cut all the tubers off right at the necks and threw the rest away, and stored them all winter, and was wondering why next year there was no growth, because I had thrown out all the eyes. So when you split your tubers, you must make sure you get a piece of the crown with it, with the eyes, or else it won't produce new growth from anywhere else except right there. Next one, Laurie. Okay, dahlia terms. Dinner plate. There is no such thing as a dinner plate dahlia. That is just a term that has been used by big box stores to sell more dahlias. In my opinion, if your dahlia is growing like a dinner plate, throw it in the garbage, because it's going to be flat and round. You don't want that. You want something with a bit of depth. It's definitely a big box store term. I've seen it even used for a 4 to 5 inch dahlia, And a dinner plate to me is 8 inches and above. Cafe au lait is one variety that's definitely the term, and that's all thanks to Martha Stewart. Everybody loves this dahlia. I'm not a fan of this dahlia because it's not easy to grow. Its color is all over the place. You can get from pink to white to brown to every color in between. It's definitely not a show dahlia. Maybe show it as a single bloom, you might get away with it, but I'm not a fan of cafe au lait. I'm not a fan of dinner plate term. Next one, Laurie. Okay, I would dahlia classifications. There is so many different dahlia classifications. I would recommend everybody get a classification handbook from the American Dahlia Society. It's got all the sizes and all the abbreviations are in this, and it's a really handy book, and it'll explain all the terms for you. There's just too many to go through right now. There's cactus, semi-cactus, balls, you name it. So get yourself a dahlia, an American Dahlia Society classification book. Next one, Laurie. Okay, stopping and double stopping. So if you're growing for garden and show, I would recommend you do this if for both. Once your plant gets to about 4 or 5 sets of leaves, just pinch out the center growth, and that'll encourage all of your laterals to grow. Otherwise, you'll just wait for that center growth to grow up really, really tall, and it'll bloom, and then your side laterals will take over. But if you do that after 4 sets of leaves, it'll encourage your laterals to grow, and you'll get flowers sooner, and you'll get more of them. A double stop is, you can see the center of that dahlia where it was first stopped. You let the laterals grow, and then you do the same thing where you stop those laterals, and that'll produce even more laterals. You can do this on the smaller varieties like palms and miniatures. I wouldn't recommend this on anything bigger than that because it slows the plant down, and giants take a long time to flower. But on palms, absolutely. If you can even do it a third time to get even more blooms, I would recommend that for both garden and show. Next one, Laurie. Okay, dahlia terms, 4 up and 6 up and 2 up. And basically what that refers to is how many stems and laterals you're allowed to grow and flower on the plant. Now, it depends on the size of your dahlia. If it's a double A, which is the biggest dahlia, an example of that would be eggy white. So if you're growing eggy white, you want to stop your plant as normal after 4 or 5 sets of leaves, but your laterals, you want to reduce them to only 2 or 3. Don't let 6 or 7 laterals grow on a giant, because you'll end up with very small flowers. Now, if you're growing an A dahlia, which is, I believe it's over 8 inches, an example would be Spartacus. It's an A dahlia. You'd let four laterals grow only. If you're growing B-size dahlias, you would let 6. BBs, 6 to 8 laterals. Miniatures, you can do anywhere from 8 to 10, sometimes 8 to 12. And palms, you want to try and get as many stems as you can. If you can get up to 16, awesome. It'll keep the size of the blooms right about an inch or about 1.5 inches. Next one, Laurie. Okay, disbudding and disbranching. Everybody knows when your laterals grow and your flowers appear, you get 3 flower buds. The one in the center is the one you want to keep. So the 2 little small flower buds either side of that main bud, you want to remove those and leave it like the center picture where it's got one single bloom. You don't want the three blooms forming. I mean, if you're growing for garden, you can let them all stay, but you're going to end up with smaller flowers. If you're growing for show, you have to take those off. And then your flower will be at its full potential if you do that. You also want to go down the stem and take off any laterals that's growing on the sides, because that will take away energy from that stem and that bloom will be smaller. You want all the energy from that lateral going into that one bloom, that one little bud right there, and it'll bring it up right up to good size, especially if you're talking about double A dahlias. You want to go all the way down that stem and remove all those laterals. So all that energy goes into that one bud, and it'll give you the biggest flower that it can be. Otherwise, if you bring that to a show and you haven't disbud it, it's going to be half the size as it should be. And the judges will, they won't even look at it. They'll just push it back. Next one, Laurie. Okay, clock face blooms and blown centers. Clock face blooms are blooms that are basically, if you look at a clock, they're face on. You don't want a clock face bloom at a show. It definitely will be pushed back. It'll lose over a bloom that's sitting properly. Clock face blooms, a famous clock face bloom sitter is Bloomquist Barbara, the yellow one on the right. It's a stunning bloom, but it always wants to grow flat facing you. And a blown center is another thing that you wouldn't bring to a flower show. It'll be disqualified right away. The bees love it because the bees can get to the center, but the judges won't like it at all. It's way past its time. Next one, Laurie. Okay, show blooms. To bring a flower to a show, you cannot have its center exposed. It's got to have a nice closed center. The stem should be nice and straight, and it should have at least one set of leaves. Some of the shows in Australia don't show any leaves, and in my opinion, it just looks kind of awful without leaves. I think they need leaves. You want your bloom sitting at a nice 45-degree angle, like that Vasio Magus there. It's just perfect. Judges love to be able to see blooms sitting at a 45-degree angle because they can see the centers. They don't want to be lifting it down off the table looking at the top of it to see the center. Next one, Laurie. And if you don't want to grow for show, just let your gardens, let your plants go crazy and don't disbud, don't disbranch, and just let them flower like crazy, and you'll still get as good a show as any. And I think that is it.
Thank you very much, Michael. All right, we'll go on to the next presenter, Saiba.
Hi.
Hi, Saiba. You want to go ahead with your presentation?
Hi, everyone. So I just want to have a small introduction about the what I do. So me and my husband run a small 1.8 acre cut flower farm in Stouffville, and we grow not just dahlias but all types of cut flowers like peonies, annuals, perennials, with lavender. And last year we had about 1,200 dahlias in our field. And then we do this part time. So we sell subscriptions that people order online or flower buckets. We do some wholesale to florists. We participated in some farmers market, and then we also do some small weddings. So next. All right. So It's only after I try to bring my blooms to join the Daily Society's show that I realized growing for market is quite different from growing dahlias for shows. So for this talk, it's more. More talking about. I'm gonna talk about more of the how growers grow dahlias and what we look for, or at least what I look for. So we're gonna talk about the stem length and strength, and bloom sizes, and also vase life. One of the most important thing that I look for is the colors and the form. And also there's definitely some market trends going on with influences from the social media, and also popular growers in the States and Canada. And we were going to talk about the ease of production, and if they're productive per plant. So for stem length, usually for most bouquets, we need about 14 inches or longer. Most florists would like them to be as long as possible. And we do have some shorter ones, so we use those shorter ones in bridal bouquets and also mason jars, and they're still really popular. And also the stems need to be strong. Um, and it's not just the strength of the stems. I just find there's some dahlias that they have strong stems, but the flower heads will just kind of snap. So that is not very good either. So next. All right. So these are all pictures that I took from my farm last year or the year before. So at the top left here, we have Wine Eye Jill. So it's a really popular cut flower. It has really long stems, despite that the plants are not that tall themselves, but the stems are long. And then we have Ruskin Diane. A tall plant, and that soft yellow with the slightly blush center is really great in bouquets. And on the right we have top right we have Sweet Love. It's a upward facing flower, so with really long stem. Bottom left, we have Nicholas. Nicholas is a really tall plant, and the blooms are they just like perfect. Like each one is um, perfectly symmetrical. I believe it's a decorative, and it's just a really productive plant. And we have Rycroft Delight, another super productive one and tall stems, and Snowhold Sonia. Again, the plants are not that tall, but the stem lengths are good for what we use in bouquets. So next. And these are some more examples. So Jolly Winnie is really popular in the growers market. It's the size of the bloom, and also the color, because it does change depend on the season. And one thing that some growers said is the flower heads are so large that sometimes it's actually too heavy to be in a bouquet because it's hard to keep the head up. And then we have Krypton Honey. This is one of my favorites. It's a peachy color, uh, a big ball with the stems really easy to use in bouquets. We have Roban Rigo, another popular cut flowers. So it's actually quite saturated in the market. So this one is used in a lot of wholesalers. And the bottom left is Rebecca's World. So I have a bouquet there, but the two bigger ones in the center with the gradational red and white is Rebecca's World. So it's a really tall plant, one of the longest stem length in my garden. And each plant, each flower vary in color. So these ones that I show in the picture, they're like more symmetrical, but you can sometimes get like a white flower with like two red petals, and surprisingly, like flowers do love them because of the long stems and just how dramatic they look. Like you have to kind of see this flower in person to be wowed by it. In the middle bottom, we have apple blossom. So I believe there are two apple blossom dahlias. So this one is actually the double form. A lot of growers look for the apple blossom, which is an anemone form. This one is a double with like dark purple in the center and or the bottom of the petals. And again, it changes drastically depend on the season, the temperature, and the growing condition. But it looks like a painting. On the bottom right, we have blatant softer glam. So it's a great cut flower, and I believe it's a really good show flower as well. It has a perfect form, long stems, and one thing that I find is very different from all the other dahlias I grow is it has really thick petals. So I find that the thicker petal makes them last longer in a vase. So next. Okay, now we also grow a few um, these shorter plants. So on the bottom left, that's senior hope. It's a really short plant. I think it's maybe like up to 2 feet in my garden. Sometimes if I grow it in the shade or next to taller plants, they do get a bit taller. But in general, they are pretty short. Even though they're so short, and each bloom is, sometimes it's not like complete semi-double. They all very not very stable in the form, but somehow it's very popular because of the color. It's like a muted pink purple, and the bottom of the petals actually has a darker color compared to the top layer, so it's somehow very popular. And in the middle we have creme de cognac. Again, it's a kind of a two-tone color. The front part is orange color. On the back is purple. It's a short plant, and we have almost like a sister on the right side, which is creme de cassis. So again, a short plant, but it's like a more on the pinkish tone. So all these are actually very popular right now. So next. So these are some of the like the pictures I took from my for my mason jars that people ordered. So these are really short stems. So we have different color mixed in, and that's how we use the shorter stems. So next. Okay. So the bloom size definitely matter for market bouquets. So I have on the picture there, there's a Cocoa Puff, which is the little one on the right. And then the big one, like you can see the size differences. So usually for sure the ones that are too large are difficult to be used practically in any bouquets. So usually, we choose the smaller size, so small and medium. And I guess that would be a BB. And also even though the larger ones are, we don't use those very much in regular bouquets, florists do ask for them a lot, because sometimes they want some more drama for arbor, wedding arches, and those large ones would fit in those. um, so okay, so I have dinner plates here. So Michael's not gonna like me having this dinner plate here, but in general, they have shorter vase life. They do last a few days, depends on the variety. So uh, florists don't mind that if they're gonna use these larger ones for. Like if they have banquets, weddings, they don't need a very long vase life. So the smaller ones in general, they do last longer in a vase. So I would say 3 to 7 days if they were, conditioned properly. And as we mentioned before, the thicker petals, usually I find that they last longer in the vase. So next. Okay, so the form, this is so right now for these more ball form dahlias, so I find that they last longer than say single ones, anemone ones, or water lily ones. So I tend to grow more ball ones, just because they last longer. So again, I have Jolly Winnie at the top left. In the middle here is the red one is Cornell, a very very popular cut flower. Again, because it's this perfect form, nice size, and just all of them look very symmetrical. And again, on the right, we have Creton honey again because I just love it. It's very peachy, and that color is kind of what most growers are looking for weddings. People just want the peach color. On the bottom left, we have Jelly Nikki. So it's a super protective. I mean, a protective, productive plant. It just grows like crazy for me. It blooms early. It blooms until the end of the season. Again, the colors change from like a more darker green in the beginning of the season for me, and it gradually gets a little lighter. In the middle, the bottom middle, we have Rycroft Jan. I think it's a really nice white ball dahlias. It's just really round, so it's good for weddings and events. On the right, we have Marn, so the orange ones, the orange balls. So Marn is, to me, it's very similar to Jowie Nikki. They're just like the workhorse for our farm because they just are so productive. So next. So okay, so sorry, Michael. I have dinner plates here. So these are the larger ones that we grow. We have actually at the top left there. That's Chanel Noel. It's a new variety that I started growing last year. It has like a pinkish center with white kind of irregular petals. They're large. They are what about, I would say, 8 inches wide at least. So because of the color, it's actually really popular for weddings. In the middle here, that's Labyrinth, another really popular one. Because of the color. So the color, there's a gradation of purple, orange, that people love, and it's just the shapes of the petals kind of different from many dahlias. On the right, there's Cafe Olay. So they are highly requested by many florists, again for weddings. They don't last very long, but they are popular because of the color for wedding. On the bottom left, we have Hamari Gold. So it's almost like a golden color. It doesn't show very well in this particular picture, but at the beginning of season for me, they look just golden, which is the color makes it really different because I don't think there are that many golden color flowers out there, and this is one of them. Now the bottom middle, we have Autostrail, the large one. It's a pink dahlia. It has a nicer form compared to the other larger dahlias. So it's a really good cut flower as well. The bottom right, we have Floral. Floral, I think is likely the biggest flower we have in our garden. So up to 8 to 10 inches wide. And despite of its size, for some reason it lasts longer in a vase than some of the larger dahlias for me. And again, popular for weddings and events. So next. All right, and so we're talking. We'll talk about colors. So for market bouquets, usually I find customers do look for brighter colors. So they don't mind a mixture of brighter ones mixed with other like lighter ones. But for what we do. Sometimes if they custom order, we actually have two choices for them, so they can choose between soft and romantic or bright and dramatic. So both of these themes are actually popular. Now for weddings, the most requested color definitely is white. And the blush colors, like the light pink, the light peach, they're always popular. And also for maybe towards the end of the season for fall weddings, the dark burgundy ones are popular too. But you will find, like for me, I find that maybe 95% of brides look for the blush color. So this is one bucket I harvested last season. So these are more the bright colors that I have. Next. Okay, so this is these are just some examples of bright colors, but there are so many more. So Jelly Nikki, the top left, Marigo again. The color Superb is a lovely color. It changes color a lot for me throughout the season. At the beginning, it's more of a darker pink, but it does get a little lighter towards the end of the season. We have Sonic Bloom at the bottom left. So in this picture, it looks orange, but sometimes it actually looks dark purple. The bottom middle is Sono Batty. So it's velvety looking purple, almost like velvet. Like it definitely looks like velvet. So some people like that color. The bottom right is Sedation. Is a really popular flower for wholesalers. So next, okay, so we have this bouquet of the blush colors that I just talked about. So these colors are definitely requested or highly requested for weddings. Next. All right, so these are some examples that I grew that are blush color. We have Chison's Pride. The top left, it gradates from pink to the outer petals are more white. It's very soft looking for a bridal bouquet. The middle here is Sweet Natalie. It, it's one of the tubers that always get sallow right away. It's a front forward facing dahlia. So like Michael talked about the clock face. So it's one of them. But it's popular because of the color. It's like nice and soft, soft pink, and also the petals are nice and round, so very romantic looking. But I do find it hard to arrange at times because of the direction of this has always facing the front, or sometimes they even droop down a little bit facing the ground, which is kind of sometimes make them useless. But if you have a forward facing one, then it's at least arrangeable. So on the right, we have Petra's Wedding. This one, it's a ball there. It's a really small one, and it's super productive, but it's on the smaller side. Because of the size, actually they're good for wedding because sometimes you don't want a huge white dahlia for someone's bouquet. The bottom left, Noel again. And the bottom middle, we have Castle Drive. So this variety has become very popular, again, because of the color. One of the most sought after dahlias lately. Um, and there's another really similar variety that looks like that called Coralie. So I still have to kind of look for more information and to learn more about these two varieties and see how they are different from each other. On the right, bottom right, we have Dave's Choice. So I got the tubers from Michael last year, and I loved it. I saw Michael's brought these to the show last year, and his blooms are a lot bigger than mine because I grow my dahlias really tightly in a 1 square foot space. Because they're not for shows. So I have these small, medium size blooms there. So the picture here is late season. That's why you can see the pink in the center. So they are almost pure white at the beginning of the season. So I love this one. Next. All right, so again, more of the blush. So we have Cafe au lait, we have Sweet Love on the right. So this one is really easy to use in bouquet because it's upward facing. The flower head faces upwards. The bottom left, we have Aloe Candy. It's almost similar in color to the other ones, but this one is a stellar with the petals, kind of turning outward. So it's quite different. The middle one we have silver years. Silver years is a blush white with a tiny little bit of a pink. I believe this one is a water lily. On the bottom right, we have Wizard of Oz. So it's a small ball, and the colors it goes from really dark pink, um, and then at the end of the season, this is how they will look like a really soft pink. So it's a really popular cut flower. One of the problem that I have with this variety is the petals do drop. As the flower mature too much, the outer petals will just drop. So if you grow this one, you might have to harvest the flowers a little earlier before they're that mature. So next. Okay, so yeah, so these are the coral or peach colors. Again, we have Casa Drive. The middle one here is Linda's Baby. One of my favorite is because of the color, the form, uh, easy to grow, and they're really protective. On the right, Criton Honey again. This is my favorite for last year. So the color and the form is perfect. And the bottom left, we have Snowhole Doris. They also change color a lot throughout the season, and you can see in the picture, even within one bloom, because I grew mine in full sun, so they kind of a little bit spotty, but but they do vary in colors in even everyone's garden. They look different. The bottom right, we have Penhill watermelon, a huge bloom. I call it crazy hair because of how many petals it has and how crazy it look. And people do love that color. But it's a really tall plant. It does need a lot of support. So we're going to talk about the dark varieties that are popular. So top left, I think you guys just talked about it at the beginning, is the Holly Hill Black Beauty, huge bloom. And it's good for arrangement because of the color. It just looks so mysterious. The top bottom we have so Diva is an 8-inch decorative bloom, and it's like a purple color. On the top right is Lynn's Maryland, which is actually, I think, is one of the darkest dahlia I have in my garden. It doesn't show in this picture, but it actually looks darker than that. Sometimes in certain lighting, it looks almost like black. Um, on the bottom left, we have Karma Chocolate or Karma Chalk. So it's a really good cut flower because it's upward facing. And you can see in the picture it's velvety black, but it looks a little darker than that in real life than in the picture. So bottom middle, we have Cornell Bronze. Cornell Bronze is an antique orange. So that antique color makes it popular among florists as well. Bottom right, we have Cocoa Puff. So Cocoa Puff is a cute little 1.5-inch ball dahlia. So it's a dark, um, like a, what do you call it? Dark pink purple. It's really popular as well. And next, sorry, am I running out of time? Let's see. Okay, so
It's okay. It's okay, Saiba. It's okay. Keep going.
sorry,
You're doing a good
sorry,
job. Don't worry about
at the clock. Okay, so these ones are the more fun varieties that I have. So the top left is marble ball. This one looks patchy, like a little patchy, uh, purple and white, but they actually all vary. Like I have some that are just purple totally. I have some that are totally white. So it's fun for the garden. And the middle again, Rebecca swirl. So it's super super popular. So when you bring the Rebecca swirl to a florist, they would just grab them. Um, Top right, that's polka, and the bottom one is also polka. So it has these little petals in the middle that when they open up, they look like a little fluff of, like a ball of fluff in the middle. So it's kind of different. I don't love it, but some people like it. The bottom left, we have Ferncliff Spice. So I just love it because it looks like it's been dipped in cinnamon. So and it's nice and cute and round. So bottom middle, we have Quasera. So this one is similar to polka. So the middle petals actually open up like a white fluff. Okay, so next. All right. So Pantone announced the color for 2021, which is ultimate gray and illuminating. So ultimate gray, we don't have any gray dahlias, so I put a picture of Dusty Miller over there. And on the right, we have Ruskin Diane, and it's yellow. So hopefully, yellow usually is not something that most people will specifically request for, but they will brighten up a bouquet a lot, and people only realize that they love yellow sometimes after seeing them in a bouquet. So next. All right, so just some of the influencers for dahlia, cut dahlia trends. So I'm sure most of you know Florette, Erin, that she just published a book about her favorite dahlia list. So I think all those the list for on her book will become really popular. Now, also we look at wedding trends, from magazines, Instagram, and Pinterest. Next. All right, so this is Erin's book. She was, one of the first to have all these dahlia buckets in her pickup truck. So it's the iconic picture of, growing dahlia growers. So almost everything that she recommend will get popular right after. Next. All right. So, in addition to the color, so I do look for productivity because as a grower you want to have as many blooms as possible in a plant. So on the top left with Linda's baby, very productive, and very I would say uniform in the bloom size and everything. So top right, I mean top middle with Wizard of Oz, a small plant but productive. Top right, One Eye Jill, very very many flowers in a plant. They're on the shorter side. The color changes throughout the season, but they're just super productive. So Marn, productive. Dave's choice for me. They just keep sending out blooms nonstop. And Alpine Sundown on the bottom right. It's a really short plant, but it branches out from the bottom. So I actually get many stems per plant from this plant. So next. Okay, so also, I love dividing tubers. But I just after dividing, 1,200 by myself, I do look for tubers that are easier to divide. So you can see the top left, that's Jowie Nikki. So all the tubers are spread out like fingers. So and almost each one of them has an eye on it. So that's a really easy to divide dahlia. Cafe au lait, again, they do look like what did they call it in the UK? Chicken drumstick. They do look like drumsticks. So cafe au lait is another easy
Chicken
one to
legs,
divide.
yeah.
Yeah, so chicken leg. Yeah, so they're very easy to divide. They all look kind of like that perfect tuber, perfect single tuber. Look, and bottom right, Brighty Brie. Super productive. So if you want to cook dahlia tubers as food, I would highly recommend having Brighty Brie, just because they produce so many big round tubers. Bottom left is also the Jolly Nixie's picture, and then the bottom right is Marn. Marn is very similar to Jolly Nikki. So next. Okay, so I'm just quickly gonna talk about my personal favorite. So Linda's baby, as I mentioned, I love it. I think every grower would like to have some of this. Next. Okay, and Sweet Love, again, upward facing cut flower, which makes them easier to do, to put in bouquets and bridal bouquets. Next. So Jason's Bride, talked about that before. So, mainly the color. The color makes it very different because it gradates from a darker pink to lighter colored at the peripheral. Next. So Dave choice, I think this is a perfect cut flower and a perfect show flower. Next. And Wine Eye Joe. So most grower would have Wine Eye Joe is a classic for cut flowers. Next. apple blossom. So I had a darker picture at the beginning of the slideshow, and this one here is how it looks at the end of the season. So it's very dramatic. Next. So yeah, so these are some of the varieties I would love to have, or I have ordered some of them online. So peaches and cream. I think almost like every Canadian grower was gonna try to get one from the United States. So they kind of become more available now in Canada this year. KA Cloud. So I think we're importing some of the states, Lori. Run Ashley is a peach color, honeydew, buttercream, buttercream, French doll. So most of these varieties I look for at the blush, colors that everyone's looking for. Next. So these are some of the bouquets I made. The top left, the left side, that's a bridal bouquet with that's Evelyn in the middle. I have a Jesus Pride and also some Dusty Miller, and on the right I actually have a Cafe au lait in there with Sweet Love. Next. Okay, so these are the brighter colors I have. So I try to mix, um, dahlias with other blooms because dahlias don't, in general, they don't last very long in a bouquet. So I have lisianthus, like yarrow, celosia that will last longer. So these are some examples. Next. Yeah, so these are the other colors, so that you can see how we mix colors together, and people are really happy receiving these bouquets because they're very different from what you can ordinarily get from a regular florist who only uses imported flowers. The typical roses and carnation, and lilies, right? So that's how local flower bouquet look like. Next. All right. So actually, that's it. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much, Saiba. I noticed that, and I can't open the chat up because I'm sharing my screen here, but I saw that the chat comments really start going up during your presentation. So I don't know if they're comments or they're questions, but it seemed to engender a lot of interest. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for having me.
There is a couple of questions.
Yeah, of
If you can look at them,
Daria,
maybe answer in writing in chat would be efficient, right?
yeah, that'd be great, Saiba, if you could start answering some of those questions in the chat.
Sure. I'm looking through them right now. So
Thank you for that, Daria.
yeah.
In the meantime, we'll continue with the presentation. So we've already gone through Jim's. And the next is Al with Chrysanthemum of the Month. Al, over to you.
I am a little perturbed because I can't find what I'm looking for. All I can find is a photograph of the participants. What am I doing wrong?
Oh. So you're not seeing my screen that I'm sharing?
No, I'm not.
I do, however, so you're sharing.
Okay, well, maybe what we're going to do is maybe in the background, I don't know if Daria, you can work with Al or not, but I'm going to move forward through to Jamie's presentation. If Al can't get the technical difficulties sorted out, I can easily present Al's section. Okay, Jamie, that takes us to you.
Fish cakes afterwards.
Hi. Hi. I'm
Hi
Jamie.
there.
Okay, so I'm a florist in Toronto, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about sustainable floral mechanics. So what you see in the image in the right is a book by Sarah Dillingen, and she's a florist in the UK who works under the name of Floribunda Rose. And she recently made this book, which is a really useful guide for anyone looking for a comprehensive overview of sustainable floral mechanics. So it's new, and I don't even know her, but I think her book is really great. And I'm happy to share this link with anyone after in the chat or by email if anyone has any questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so what does sustainability have to do with floral mechanics? Primarily, this slide is meant to talk about floral foam. So traditional floral foam is a very commonly used product across the floral industry. It's a plastic product containing known cancer-causing compounds like phenol and formaldehyde. It's not biodegradable, despite the fact that it breaks down into smaller pieces. These small pieces fall under the category of microplastics. So when these microscopic fragments are consumed in aquatic environments, they travel up the food chain and can eventually end up in our bodies. So when they're thrown in the garbage, they become non-biodegradable plastic for the landfills, and it's estimated that floral foam takes approximately 500 years to decompose. So the reason I'm talking about this is because over many, many years, floral foam has sort of been a go-to mechanic for many florists. And basically, it's unnecessary. There's lots of creative ways that we can avoid using it. And I think it's been posed as a convenient solution that sort of removes the art of balance and problem solving from floristry, which is most of the fun part. And yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys about some other options for hydrating and sculpting flowers. And all of the examples I'm going to talk about are environmental alternatives to foam. So, designs that do not employ the use of floral foam mark a return to celebrating the natural form and character of our organic materials that we're using. So, and this is a quote, it's as if by removing this artificial static component, nature is back in charge, which I really like. And I feel like if the royal royal wedding can be foam-free, a foam-free event, and you can see the scale there, I don't know what can't be. And one shout out to a really incredible account and sustainability advocate within the flower world is an account on Instagram called No Floral Foam, and they are constantly updating new techniques and methods for creating arrangements without the use of foam. Okay, next slide. So the first mechanic I'm going to talk about is just a simple tape grid. This is most easily done when using waterproof florist tape, but I've definitely made do with Scotch tape before as well. So this grid technique allows you to design using shallow bowls and vessels with wide mouths, as it prevents the stems from flipping out. It's especially useful if you're designing into clear glass vessels, so you don't have to see the mechanics underwater. And the added structural integrity of the tape remains invisible after the flowers have been placed. Next slide. Okay. The second mechanic I want to talk about is one that we use a lot for event florals. This technique works across all sizes of vessels, from compote dishes to large urns. Here we use a piece of chicken wire that is bent into a circular shape. The chicken wire is then held into place with waterproof tape. And once you start adding stems, the structure becomes quite strong. So you can also reuse these balls of chicken wire that you make again and again. Next slide. So this image on the left sort of shows chicken wire being employed in sort of that classic compote dish vessel. And the image on the right is just to give you an idea of what it looks like underwater. So generally, it's easiest to start with greenery and foliage to create your shape, and then add flowers after the shape and structure has been established. One sort of word of advice is if you scrunch up your chicken wire ball too small, there's not a lot of space to shove the stems through. So it can be quite loose actually. Next slide. So these images are representative of the chicken wire technique, but for the purpose of a larger scale installation. So these are buckets filled with chicken wire and water. And after being mounted, they can be filled with greenery to create any shape imaginable. So I think a technique similar to this was employed to create the flower wall at the royal wedding we saw in the earlier slide. All materials here can be reused for future events, and you can make it look different depending on whatever you put in there. Next slide. Now I'm going a little bit rogue and telling you about some quirky alternatives to chicken wire and also totally organic solutions. So just like gardening, floristry requires an aptitude for creative problem solving. These are environmentally sound solutions to the mechanics provided by chicken wire. In this example, someone has used cut up branches. Something like curly willow would be great. And then it will start sprouting on you as well and add to the arrangement. And my next slide, the photo on the left is a dried lion's mane mushroom that was bought dried and then rehydrated. So the stems are able to be stuck right into the mushroom as if it was a pincushion sort of sponge thing. On the right, the designer has filled the shallow bowl with large pine needles. Again, the structure allows stems to be stuck in and then held in place. Both create zero waste and can be composted after use. Next slide. So these images, the ones on the last slide and these ones I'm showing you now are courtesy of a designer named Sue McCleary. And she recently started experimenting with the use of snow fungus that she bought dried from her local Asian grocer. So once rehydrated, the snow fungus is penetrable, but also holds its form. It also creates like a really beautiful and unusual texture and color. So all of this is just to say that there's lots of opportunity for experimentation. And then lastly, I want to speak briefly about my favorite and most used floral mechanic, which is the floral frog or kenzan. This device comes from and is used specifically in the Japanese art of flower arranging, ikebana. Kenzans generally consist of a heavy lead plate with erected brass needles. And the kenzan literally translates to sword mountain, I read, which I thought was kind of cool. The white tape you see in the photo on the lower left is floral adhesive clay, sometimes called sure stick. You can use this to better affix the kenzan to the bottom of your vessel. You would do this by sort of rolling it between your hands and warming it up, and then you put it on the bottom, and you want to make sure both the kenzan and the vessel are dry for it to stay stuck. And this just make sure you can use heavier stems so the whole thing doesn't topple over, which it often does and always does for me, but prevents that a little bit more, and it also helps you to transport flowers if you need to. This arrangement is something I made using a kenzan, and this one isn't necessarily minimalistic, but the kenzan is really great at helping us create minimalistic arrangements that emphasize lines and visual movement. So they're incredibly easy to use and experiment with, and I feel like you can transform any plate or bowl or unusual vessel you might have into a vase with one and really flex your ikebana practice and meditation.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie.
Okay,
That was excellent. And I have to admit that at the shows, we use a lot of the oasis. We go through so much of that floral foam.
Yeah,
it's really quite terrible. Yeah. So, you know, I'm hoping, you know, this will help us to come up with some more sustainable solutions for that in the future. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's go back to Al's presentation, see if he's going to be able to present his portion. If not, I can present it, and then we can go to some questions.
It's like we lost Al.
So Al, how are you doing? We lost Al.
I can't
Okay.
see him anymore.
So I can take, okay. I can take you through Al's presentation. So he was going to be discussing spray chrysanthemums, which basically when you're exhibiting our group 28 or 29 and 19. I don't know section 9, but I'm going to take Al's word for it. They're easy to grow for show, and they're easy to grow for cut flower, and they last a long time in the vase. But we don't see a lot of them on the show bench. You can get them in single forms like the MB wedding family, or you can get them in double flower forms like Mary Brownbridge, which I think might have been in the sale. So you need to take the cuttings a little bit, you tend to take them a little bit later than some of the other chrysanthemums. Al here has indicated mid-April. They're pretty fast growing. You can take them in, earlier and then use those as mother plants. And then you can kind of increase your stock. After rooting in mid-April, at about 6 weeks, you can pinch or stop them. And then if you grow for show, you're going to reduce the number of shoots to around 4. However, if you're growing for cut flowers, you can let as many shoots grow up as you want. And they grow, Al indicates they grow as well in a pot as in the ground. I haven't tried that yet with sprays, but they are fast growers. And so you really need to make sure that you're feeding them properly. And it looks like Al uses sometimes tomato cages to help contain the plants. So at the time that the buds start forming, the crown bud, which is the one right in the very middle, it's removed. And what happens then is all the side buds can then develop to give this kind of spray formation. There you can get October blooming plants, and you can get ones that bloom even later than that. I have one blooming in September, so I'm thinking like a September, October, November for sprays. But what I would really like to see is I'd like to see more of these at the show. That section is usually quite sparse. So I think we need to get more people growing these. I think these are the easiest chrysanthemums to start with versus the larger exhibition ones. So I'm hoping we can encourage others to start growing these. And of course, if you're growing the later blooming ones, you're going to have to grow them in pots and then bring them inside your greenhouse, or I have kind of like a polytunnel, and I'll put them in there to finish blooming. And that's it. So I'm going to stop share here. And I don't know how we're doing in the chat with regards to questions being answered, but what I'm going to do is we have all our presenters here. So we're going to have everybody open their mics, and we're going to have a Q&A period. We're going to try and moderate it. Anyone want to start the questions? Yeah. Anybody have any questions for any of the presenters?
Saliva, how does she deal with Japanese beetles?
Saiva, did you hear that question? Chris is
yes,
asking what you do with Japanese beetles.
Yeah, I just entered that in the chat. My solution is we go pick them, and dump them into the bucket of soapy water, like what is supposed to, recommended by others. We actually protect each bloom. Like I go and bag each bloom every morning. It's not just Japanese beetles for us, it's everything. We have these leaf hoppers. We have earwig, which is a really big problem for us. We have all kinds of insects. So I bag every one of the blooms. So that's what I have to do in order to have them sellable. I've talked to some growers in the Niagara Falls region. Feeder flower farm. She has a really nice dahlia field, and surprisingly, she actually doesn't need to use anything. So I think it could be sometimes just the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so far in Orangeville, knock on wood, we're very lucky.
Knock on wood.
I saw a question about the organza bags. Now, I purchased all my organza bags off Amazon. I got some really large ones, but I noticed those large ones aren't available anymore. That's where I purchased them, to whoever asked that question. Okay, anybody else?
I got a comment
Yeah,
regarding, regarding the Japanese beetles, okay? Now, this is up to the individual growers, okay? Whether or not it works, I have no idea. Many years ago, I read an article that was put out by McMaster University, and they were dealing with the fact that bugs, like anything else, can smell death, okay? So with that in mind, what I did was I caught the Japanese beetles. I killed them, of course, with just simple soap and water. Just knocked them into the soap and water, and of course they died. Now, what happens is they start to decay, and of course they stink. Okay, and believe me, they do. But what I did was I used a 6 foot 2x2, for example. Okay, and the containers that raspberries come in, okay, or even blueberries, okay, they're thin. They got holes in them, okay. So I used a tack and I pushed it into the wood, okay. I put the Japanese beetles inside, dead, of course, okay, and then I put them above my head, okay. That way I didn't smell them, okay. But I think it works, okay.
That's
really-
interesting.
Okay. It's an obscure way of doing it, but when you read the article, the Master University, they were trying to get a like a bug spray that actually smelled like death, okay, to the bugs, not to us, but to the bugs. Whether or not they ever did, I have no idea, but I still have the article and I will send it to anybody who wants it, okay, to get a better understanding of it. So I could send it to you, Lori, and then you could send it out.
Oh, the dead bug. Perfume the dead bug.
30 years of trying some crazy stuff.
There's also the beneficial nematode that people use in the soil in the beginning of the season, right? Because the Japanese beetles, Japanese beetles, they pop up in June, and if the nematodes are placed in the soil the fall or early spring, I think it kills the grubs.
Yeah, nematodes.
Mm-hmm.
The nematodes.
Nematodes.
I
Right?
read that too.
Any other questions, guys?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Hi. I was wondering if Murray is still there.
I'm still
Yeah,
here.
Murray's here.
Hi, Murray. I was wondering what greenhouse you purchased for your second greenhouse.
It was through Backyard Greenhouses in London. I'm not sure whether they're still in business or not, but they were really a whole lot cheaper than what it was for BC greenhouses by something like $1,000, maybe $1,200.
Wow. So what model did you choose, or what make, or?
Well, you'll see the picture of it next month.
Oh.
Oh, Murray, don't be a tease.
You got to come back, okay?
Well, I will definitely come back, but I'm looking now for a greenhouse. So I'm just overwhelmed with, for instance, I have a budget that I have to stick to, but there's a lot of crap out there, to be honest with you. And that's not what I want to purchase. I want to purchase something decent, but within my budget. So I'm not sure where to look, really.
Oh,
May
okay.
I ask for people to assemble suggestions? Because many of us in that situation, and just a couple thousand doesn't seem to cut it.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No.
Really, when you look at greenhouses, it's not inclusive. The greenhouse is the first part of it. What you see, what you saw in that particular presentation tonight would be the structure itself, but not heating, not ventilation, not the base, not tax, not installation. So when you figure these things out, you need to consider that you need to have the horsepower to build it, and allow a little bit for heating and cooling and tax.
Well, come on, Murray, give us a little bit of an insight into who and what model.
Okay, what you saw there when I did the insurance replacement, they were looking at $5,000 for what you saw in that picture, without the base, without heating, without ventilation. What I wound up finding with backyard greenhouses in London, they were about $3,500. Now, for reconstructing after that crash from the tree branch, there was a group from the Niagara area that bid $1,700 to simply replace what got killed with that tree branch. So that was amazing. But Al and I together wound up putting in a bid, and we did it for a whole lot less than that. But just bear in mind, okay, so the furnace by itself that you will see next time around was about $1,500. That was for the furnace to buy it. But then you have to run a gas line out to it, or you have to equip it with propane or whatever it turns out to be. There's all these kind of things that let's just say there's a variance between about 5,000 if you do it yourself, and if you have somebody else do it and pay the tax and pay the installation charges for the gas lines, pay the construction for the greenhouse and everything else, you're getting closer to about 11.5 or 12 grand. That's not a figure that you wanted to hear, I know that. But the more that you can do yourself, the better it is.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that very much.
Well, I'm sure you can do it for a whole lot less than that. You just have to wind up making sure that you invite people over for supper that really have some muscles and some capability for building this sort of stuff.
I
When
will.
you say, sorry, when you say
Sorry.
metal frame, Murray, do you mean aluminum or do you mean other material?
Not very many frames are actually aluminum. Aluminum costs more than steel. Steel is stronger than aluminum. Well, not by weight, but by fundamental strength. So really what you're likely to wind up getting is a well-painted steel type of frame. But yeah, plastic by itself would be killed very easily with a falling tree branch. And with what you saw in my presentation, that should really persuade you to go to something a whole lot stronger. And that means a metal frame, whatever type of metal frame, rather than plastic.
Okay.
Now, my dad actually built his own greenhouse, and he used wood 2x4s and then did a double layer of the greenhouse plastic. So it's got the UV protection, and that lasted him for a lot of years. But you do eventually have to replace that. But at least it's more of a quick fix. And you do get quite a bit of airspace between the two layers with the wood construction. So your thermal loss is going to be less.
But I think, as Murray indicated, and that's what's stopping me from building one, is the rigorous building of the foundation. It really has to be well thought through, and draining and keeping heat in and stuff like that. So it needs good thought.
Every person has their own ability to pay, and every person has their own individual needs, and you have to wind up working your way through all of that. Nothing is forever. Metal lasts longer than plastic. Plastic and wood are a little bit shorter in lifespan, but really it gets down to the next question is, how much lifespan do you need out of what you're planning? So that's something that everybody individually has to answer.
Any more questions, guys? Michael's here. I see Jim's back. Saiba's here. Jamie's here.
I could ask Jim a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go
going
ahead,
back
Rob.
to Jim. Yeah, going back to Jim's Embrace. Did I hear you say that Embrace was released in the US? Is Jim there?
Jim's on mute. Yeah.
I know, I'm okay now. It first appeared in the US in 1999, okay? The gentleman that released it had connections in here in the States, let's put it that way. And he actually sent it over, and I think it was released kind of like simultaneously between US and Australia, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
I thought it was raised in Australia.
It was raised in Australia. Maybe I should rephrase this. Not released in the USA. It has an asterisk beside it. So that's the first time that it appeared on the show bench. Okay. So maybe
okay, I got
wrong to say that it was released in 99, but that's when it first appeared, 1999.
Right.
Okay.
So I had a good laugh at Michael's dislike of dinner plate and Saiva's constant mention of dinner plate. I was having a very good chuckle over that. And actually, Saiva, I myself have purchased 2 tubers of KA's Cloud, as you know, as well as Castle Drive. Now, tell me what I can expect. Oh, 3, yeah. Well, tell me what I can expect with Castle Drive. Is it a good tuber producer?
Yeah, mute.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Hi.
Saiva, yeah, great,
Yeah,
thank
so,
you.
Lori, I actually just I got 4 tubers from a grower in Saskatchewan, and this year, and I made lots of cuttings, so it's a really good tuber to make cuttings. It's really productive for cuttings. I think right now I have over maybe like 30-40 tubers from that 4 tubers.
Wow.
From the chicken leg?
Yeah, chicken leg and also the cuttings.
Okay. Yeah. So this will be your first year growing it. You don't know like how much tubers it'll make in the ground. Okay.
Oh, second year, yeah.
Oh, second year. Okay. Good.
I have a last question. Is anybody interested in a copy of Ladies of Today? No?
Yes.
Maureen?
Who said yes? Was that Maureen?
No. I am.
Oh, sorry, Janet. Janet Boyce. Yep.
It's a wonderful book. Wonderful book.
So did you already have one
Okay.
ordered, Janet?
I think I had messaged him last month.
Yeah, so, and maybe Janet's already on your list, Rod.
Well, I mailed everyone the copy that mailed me before, emailed me before. So if Janet gives, if you give me Janet's last name, I will send it to her, depending where she lives.
Boyce, B-O-Y-C-E.
Boy.
I'll email you.
C-O-Y.
I'll email you.
Oh, you email me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
So
guys.
it's $21 for the copy and probably about $5 for the mail.
Okay. Can Siva
Okay.
tell me the difference between the two apple blossom?
Yeah, so we saw Siva's picture of apple blossom, right?
Yeah.
And then
The
we
other-
have the, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The other popular one is the yellow color that Florette has on her website and her book. So after she promoted that, everyone wanted that kind of apple blossom, but mine is actually not the popular apple blossom out there.
I think there's a color.
I can share my screen here. I'll show you an image here. Here. This is Florette's apple blossom here. This is the other form.
Oh yeah, it is a single.
Not nearly as nice.
No.
Like, even though, I didn't get this one, but everyone fights for these tubers. They
Yeah.
go online, they disappear within like a second.
Yeah.
You know what's nice?
Okay.